This is the new 2023 Toyota Crown, and it's a bit odd. It's a full-size sedan that's replacing the Toyota Avalon, but it's lifted up a bit to become kind of an SUV for people who want a sedan, but also a crossover. It's certainly strange, and today I'm going to review the Crown and show you all of its quirks and features. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era with free listings. You can list your cool car for sale and auction it for free on Cars and Bids. And you should, because we've had some great sales recently, like this Acura NSX, which sold for $82,000, a great number for a great car. This fantastic Mercedes E63 AMG wagon, which sold for just over $46,000, and this wonderful Chevy Camaro ZL1, which brought just over $64,000. If you're looking to buy or sell a cool enthusiast car from the modern era, the 1980s and up, Cars and Bids is the place to do it, with daily auctions, great selection, and free listings. Check it out at carsandbids.com. All right, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the Crown with probably its biggest quirk, which is, what exactly is this vehicle? Okay, so a little overview. Full-size sedan, like I said, replacing the Avalon. I'm going to start with the name, Crown. Toyota has used this name primarily in other markets for decades. Apparently it hasn't been in the US market since the 1970s, but it has returned as an Avalon replacement. However, where the Avalon was just a traditional full-size sedan and has been for years, the Crown is more of an SUV-ish sedan. I guess Toyota has watched as the full-size sedan market has shrunk and shrunk with more consumers moving into SUVs, so they decided to inject a little SUV into their full-size sedan. And that's the Crown. Now, whether they actually succeeded in making this SUV-ish enough for customers is a matter of debate, but here are the facts. The ground clearance is relatively similar to a Toyota Camry, basically the same, so it's not dramatically higher off the ground, but the overall height is about 3 inches taller than a Honda Accord, but 6 inches shorter than a Honda CR-V, so it sort of straddles the line between car and crossover, although it is a little bit more towards the car realm of things. Now, it comes with standard all-wheel drive, which is more crossover-y for sure, and it does seem to have a higher seating position, which I'll talk more about when I drive the Crown later in this video. It also has kind of the look of a crossover with big wheels and then a higher belt line that's intended to make it visually look taller, even though it's not that much taller than a sedan. Now, the concept of a SUV-ified sedan has been tried before. In the late 90s, Subaru came out with the Outback SUS, which stood for Sport Utility Sedan, and they actually made that for several generations. There was a second gen and then a third gen, but they were never particularly big sellers, especially compared to the traditional Outback station wagon. Volvo also tried it with the S60 Cross Country, sort of an off-roady version of their S60 sedan, but again, it never really took off compared to the V60 and V70 Cross Country models, which were always more popular. Nonetheless, here we are, another SUV-ified sedan. And then we move on to powertrains, which is also a little bit unusual. This full-size or luxury-ish sedan is offered with 2 available 4-cylinder engines, but they are hybrid 4-cylinders and they make decent power. The base level engine is a 2.5-liter hybrid 4-cylinder, makes about 235 horsepower. That comes standard in the base model, which is called the XLE, starts around $41,000, and the Limited, the middle model, which starts around $47,000. That's what this particular Crown is. Now, the Crown with this powertrain does 0 to 60 in about 7.5 seconds. Not exactly fast, but adequate. But you can also upgrade to the Crown Platinum, the top-of-the-line model. That starts around $53,000, and it gives you a turbocharged hybrid 4-cylinder, which is good for about 340 horsepower, and 0 to 60 in about 5.7 seconds. seconds, which is relatively quick, especially for a large, luxurious sedan from Toyota. Now, all of these Crown models, regardless of powertrain, come with a CVT automatic transmission, and like I said, all-wheel drive is standard on all of them, and fuel economy is surprisingly impressive. On the base level powertrain, you get 42 miles per gallon in city driving and 41 miles per gallon in highway driving, more than 40 miles per gallon in a big luxury sedan. And even if you upgrade to the Crown Platinum and get its 340 horsepower turbo engine, you still get 30 miles per gallon in combined city and highway driving, which would have been unheard of a few years ago for a car this size and this level of luxury. Not bad in terms of fuel efficiency. Now, as for rivals to the Crown, there aren't many. This full-size sedan segment is slowly dying, and a lot of the cars that used to be in it are going away. You have the Volkswagen Arteon, which is Volkswagen's big sedan, but it has sort of a sportier feel and push than the Crown. You also have the Nissan Maxima, again a sportier model, but Nissan has announced that is being canceled. There's the Chrysler 300, which seems like a direct rival to the Crown, but that too is going away soon. And of course, the Toyota Avalon is gone, replaced by this. The Chevy Impala is gone, just canceled. The Ford Taurus is gone, just canceled. There's not too many other vehicles left. Again, consumers are making the switch to SUVs. Probably most of this car's biggest rivals are SUVs and crossovers. So we'll see if SUVifying this car adds some life into this slowing full-size sedan market. But anyway, next we move inside the Crown, where I have to say, aside from this car's market position, there's not all that much quirky about it. An SUV-ified large sedan is definitely weird, but getting in here, well, it's fairly normal, fairly traditional Toyota. In fact, you look around and you can see the materials are nice. This is supposed to be a kind of near luxury sedan, sort of almost Lexus, I would say, and it looks good in here. Nothing way luxurious, nothing tremendously nice, but a nice place to spend time with some good materials. Now, with that said, there are a few interesting quirks in here, not many, but I'm going to start with the gear selector, which is a little unusual. Now, this is how all hybrid Toyota models work, but if you're not familiar, it's a little strange. You get this gear selector and you move it to the left and down if you want to go into drive. You move it to the left and up if you want to go into reverse, and just over to the left if you want neutral. Park is a button below the gear selector marked P, but the odd thing might be the B gear that you see here. This stands for braking, and if you're in drive and then you pull the gear selector down, you go into an engine braking mode, sort of like a low gear that some automatic transmissions have for going down hills so you don't have to ride your brakes. A little odd, but that's how the gear selector works. Now, also in the center console, and worth pointing out, I like the vertical wireless cell phone charger here. Instead of a flat tray like some cars have, where the phone can fly around if you stop suddenly or get in an accident, this vertical one keeps it in position and it takes up a lot less space, which is pretty cool. Also notable in the center console is this trick center console lid that I've been pointing out in newer Toyotas. I guess they're putting it in everything. You can open it from the driver's side and there you have a center console storage area, pretty standard, but if you close it, then you can also open it from the passenger side and get access to the same center console storage lid, and then you can just open it from both sides over and over again and play with it like it's a toy, which you should because it is magic. Another interesting thing, this car has a panoramic sunroof going over the whole interior like so many cars do, and it doesn't open, which is fairly standard, but the weird part is there is a bar going over the front seats. A lot of panoramic sunroofs have a bar for more structural support, but usually not so far forward, and the result is that the front part of this sunroof is very small, one of the smallest sunroofs I've ever seen in a car. Kind of an unusual placement for that bar. One cool touch, you have heated seats, of course, and cooled seats, and you have a heated steering wheel. The cool part is you can turn them all to automatic. You can see it here, they're all on auto, and that way you don't even have to turn on your heated or cooled seats. You get in the car, it's a warm day, the car will automatically cool the seats for you, just like an automatic climate control system will blow to your desired temperature. Well, this car, the seats and steering wheel will do that as well. A nice luxury touch. And next up, moving on to a more practical item inside this interior, the center touchscreen. You have a fairly large center screen mounted on the dashboard, and it has some benefits. It's quite responsive to your touch, which is nice. It's also well laid out, very intuitive. You don't have to go deep into menus. It's pretty simple and pretty usable. My complaint is that it's not really all that advanced compared to rivals systems. For instance, the home screen, well, there's not really one. A lot of rivals have a home screen that'll show like the map and the radio, and sometimes even your phone or the temperature or whatever. This, you kind of can only do one thing at once, which is a little bit disappointing, especially when the screen is this large. Same deal with the gauge cluster screen. It's also a little bit basic. Despite being a screen, it's not tremendously configurable. Now, you can configure the columns on the left, center, and right of this screen, which is great, but you can't do any full screen stuff. So you can't get like a full screen map or have half the screen show your music and half show a map. Like in a lot of cars, you can do that. Not really the case here. The gauges are always fixed in place, and you can only change the small menus below them. Now, with that said, you can finally get your music here and a map in this center screen. Smaller than I'd like, but they're there, which hasn't been the case on previous Toyota models. So it seems like they're refining and improving their gauge cluster screen, which is nice to see. Also worth pointing out, the gauge cluster screen will give you an eco score as you drive along. Based, I guess, on how green your driving is, it will actually score you, so you can try to improve your eco score to get better fuel economy out of your Crown, which I guess adds a little bit more fun to the driving experience. If you're not in some powerful car, you now get scored on your efficiency. And next we move on to the back seat of the Crown, and like you might expect from a full-size sedan, it's a pretty roomy back seat. That's especially true for legroom and knee room. I just have a lot of it back here, even as a tall adult, it's no problem. Now, this car does have a teardrop kind of tapering roofline shape, which always makes me worry about headroom, but here there's a cutout behind the sunroof where you stick your head and have pretty good headroom. Not huge, it could be taller, but that's the price you pay for the style of the Crown. Now, aside from that, nothing particularly unusual back here, sort of like the front, just a fairly typical large sedan. You have power ports to plug in devices in the back of the front center console, and you have climate control vents back here, which of course improves airflow and comfort. And in case that's not enough, you even have heated rear seats, which is also a nice luxury touch. You can fold down this center armrest, which reveals, well, a center armrest and also cup holders. And other than that, well, that's just a fairly typical back seat in a luxury sedan. Nothing else interesting back here. And finally, we move on to the cargo area, the trunk in the Crown. Although before I get inside, let's talk opening the trunk, which is a little bit quirky. You walk up to it and there's no immediately obvious trunk popper. There's no like button you can push anywhere. Pressing on the logo doesn't work. It's not above the license plate. Where did they hide it? The answer is it's over on this taillight on the right side. There's a little indentation down here and a button. If you push the button, feel around, then you pop open the trunk and you can open it up, where you discover that this car has a massive trunk, which is something that people who buy full-size sedans love about their full-size sedans. A big trunk where you can get a lot of stuff. Gotta load in those golf clubs. And this car delivers. Other than that, nothing unusual or interesting or special about this trunk, although you do have little tabs that you can pull to release the rear seats. So you're back here with some large item. You don't have to go back inside, release the seats, push them forward. You can unlock them from back here and just slide your big thing through and fold the seats down. Even the exterior styling of this car isn't really that unusual. Well, except for the obvious that it's like a raised up sedan to look like an SUV, but the actual styling itself, fairly generic, fairly tame, fairly simple, looks like a kind of regular sedan. Now, it does have big wheels. These are 21-inch wheels, which apparently are the largest Toyota has ever put on a car, and they've lifted up the belt line. So the window line going along the bottom of the windows is lifted up, I think, to kind of give it some visual lift and make it look a little taller to help go with that SUV-ified image. But other than that, the most unusual unusual thing on the outside of this car is the grille. You have this giant, it's actually a fake grille. There are no openings, just a lot of triangles purely for style, and it certainly looks a little strange. That goes along with the lifted height, but otherwise kind of a normal traditional sedan look for this car, just SUV-ish. All right, driving the new Toyota Crown. And I have to say, the first thing that hits me driving this car is it's surprisingly dull and uninteresting. This probably shouldn't have surprised me. I've been reading that it's you know, the suspension is tuned for comfort, and obviously it's a replacement for the Avalon, which was never a particularly interesting car. It's just a generic full-size sedan. But when you look at the Crown, I think you think that it's going to be interesting because it's this tall sedan that's trying to be an SUV, and that is weird. Like, that alone is interesting and unusual. So you think, okay, this car must be interesting and unusual, but it's not. And indeed, when you get behind the wheel and drive it, that certainly is true. Now, I am driving the limited model, the mid-spec trim, like I mentioned, which has the smaller engine. Actually, it's a larger engine, 2.5 liters opposed to 2.4, but it has less power. Only about 235 horsepower in this car versus 340 in the Platinum with its turbo powertrain. Now, the benefit here is fuel economy. Again, 41, 42 miles per gallon in combined driving. That's amazing for a car this size. But the drawback is that means it's probably not going to be particularly exciting, and indeed it's not. All right, I'm flooring it here. Feels strained to even accelerate at all a brisk pace. 0 to 60 in the mid-7s is not particularly quick. That's not a very fast car by modern standards at all. And so the fun factor is definitely, well, basically non-existent in this car. But that makes sense when you think about who Toyota is trying to sell this to. So my guess is that Toyota has watched shoppers go away from the Avalon in search of crossovers, SUVs. And so they figured, well, let's get rid of the Avalon and instead create a similar vehicle, but with some elements of a crossover. The drawback of doing that, though, is that most people would probably rather just get a crossover, and Toyota has some compelling ones. The Venza, I think, is the crossover that most people would get. Also a hybrid, higher up, more traditional crossover styling. That's like the Toyota crossover that people coming out of an Avalon would probably want. So why not just get that? The RAV4 hybrid exists. The Highlander hybrid exists if you want more space. Toyota has a lot of vehicles in this segment, so SUV-ifying a sedan, I don't know. So there's already a little bit of skepticism. Then you get behind the wheel, and I have to say, it's a sedan. It doesn't really feel that much taller. It does feel a little taller, I will say. So if you love sedans and you want one and you miss one, but you also want a crossover, this is that. But it doesn't feel that much taller. Like, I would rather be sitting in a Venza or in a crossover. Plus you get the extra cargo space that a crossover sort of hatchback design has. So I'm wondering, why exactly does someone buy this over a crossover? I guess only if they are an enthusiast of a sedan, and I just don't think there's that many people out there who are that. Now, from a driving perspective, I will say this car is nice. It drives nice and comfortably. It's quiet, it's relaxed, it's luxurious, but all of this is true of Toyota's crossovers. The Highlander hybrid, the Venza again, and the Lexus hybrids as well. The NX, the RX, they're all great at this. So I'm just a little bit confused as to exactly who is supposed to buy this car. And I had the same confusion when Subaru came out with the Outback SUS when I was 10 years old, and I thought that was bizarre, and it did okay, but then it failed. And then Volvo came out with the S60 Cross Country, same deal, that also failed. This is gonna have the same situation. People want crossovers, they don't want sedans, they've made that clear. So creating a sedan that is mimicking a crossover is just odd. Now, I do want to underscore once again, this is a good car. It drives well, it's comfortable, like, it's predictable. The power could be better, but you can also upgrade to the Platinum and get more power. Fuel economy is pretty impressive. Like, there are nice things about this car. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me personally. And I think that that's going to translate to shoppers too. I don't think a lot of people are going to choose this over a crossover when they could have a choice of many crossovers at the same number. But if for whatever reason you are a sedan enthusiast and you mourn the demise of the full-size sedan, there is still one for you. Even though sales of all the other ones have completely dried up and gone away, this is here, it is new, it is good gas mileage, it's as efficient as a much smaller car, and it's available if you're crazy enough to want it. The Toyota Crown. And so that's the new 2023 Toyota Crown. Toyota's full-size sedan SUV thing. This is definitely unusual, and I find it surprising that Toyota decided to give it another shot in this dying segment by injecting some SUV into its sedan. They will sell a few of these, but my prediction is it will not be a huge hit. Anyway, now it's time to give the Crown a Doug score. And the Doug score is here, 46 out of 100, placing the Crown dead last on this list, and frankly not even really close to being competitive with some relevant cars, even sorta rivals like the Volvo S60 Polestar and the Volkswagen Arteon. Frankly, I don't really get the Crown. I think most buyers would be way better served with an SUV, especially Toyota's own Venza or the Lexus RX, and I think the Crown is a weird last-ditch effort at trying to make a sedan happen, but frankly one that wasn't necessary because I think that ship is already sailed. I might feel differently if I had just driven the higher performance Crown Platinum, but overall I think the Crown is outclassed by most crossovers which provide all the same benefits of the Crown but with more practicality, better styling, and a higher seating position.